Welcome back to Shoot the Ones, weekly mixed martial arts podcast, bringing you the most current events, fight announcements, predictions, and more. We're your Ukrainian host with the most. I'm Dema.
And I'm Genya. This week we have for you on episode 14, UFC 211. We're going to go over some recent MMA fight announcements and news, as well as go over a couple of these boxing matches from the past couple weeks.
Right on. Real quick, you can catch us on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, and MMApodcast.com. So we have a couple of exciting fight announcements. You want to talk about that first?
Absolutely. A lot of interesting fights have been announced for the UFC 213 card, starting with the rumored Shevchenko versus Nunes. That's the only one that's not official yet, but that might be the headliner for this card.
Yeah, and it looks like things are going to work out, and this fight is actually going to come together.
Yeah, it does seem that way, Dema. The only thing that they're not sure about is the exact date. That's why the UFC 213 was kind of a rumor date. That's what what the UFC is hoping for.
Initial thoughts? I think it's a really good matchup.
Yeah, it's a rematch. If you watch the first fight, it was a hell of a fight. Nunes used her experience and won the first two rounds pretty handily. But the third round, Shevchenko kind of got her steam, when Nunes was tiring out. So it's going to be interesting to see this in a 5-round affair and for the title. And the other thing I've noticed is both girls have grown a lot since that fight. I would say Shevchenko more so. I mean, Shevchenko, her 10th fight professionally was against Sarah Kaufman, who at that time was a pretty solid contender.
That's an excellent assessment, Genya. Like you said, it breaks down to Nunes comes out and spends a lot of energy in the initial stages of the fight, whereas Shevchenko will be more likely to endure and pace herself better for the duration of 5 rounds. Again, both of them came a long way and improved as fighters, and this rematch is actually going to be, more exciting to me than I was initially for their first fight.
Demon, how about on the same card, UFC 213? And these have been what would be the word? Validated. They're official.
Official.
That's the word I'm looking for. They're official fights. Robbie Lawler, Donald Cerrone, Verdum versus Overeem, which we talked about as being rumored a couple weeks ago, so we got that one right. And Pettis is going back to 155 against Jim Miller.
Yeah, 213 is filling up and in line with, these juggernaut cards we have coming up. This is looking to be a good year. Good rest of the year.
Yeah, solid fights. I'm excited to see what Donald Cerrone comes up looking like off of a loss. It's been a while since he lost. I think the time before that was Rafael Dos Anjos. And Robbie Lawler also coming off a loss as a champion to Tyron Woodley. I believe this is his first fight back, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm interested to see where he is and where his head is at. And it's just a fun fight. I remember it being scheduled before Robbie Lawler was a champ at some point, and that fight falling through.
I think this is really good matchmaking. Like you said, both guys are coming off of the loss, and they had time to recuperate considering they've been through wars, both of them. Cerrone coming off of a super busy schedule, having some time off to nurse his injuries. This is a great fight, I think.
If you had to favor one of them, who do you think you'd favor?
I'm thinking probably Cerrone.
Oh, really?
A little bit more technical of the two. A little bit more technical of the two with his striking, and I think he might be able to land some shit on Robbie because he's also rangier than he is.
Yeah, I was thinking, honestly, I have opposing opinions to you. I thought it would be the other way around. I think Robbie Lawler is a little bit of a harder puncher. Maybe not quite as technical like you said, but the naturally bigger fighter. And I don't see Donald Cerrone as being a better opponent than Rory McDonald. And we all saw what happened with Rory twice when they fought.
Yeah, I guess the question to me would be, is Robbie Lawler that we saw against Rory McDonald the same fighter now that, he was then?
It's a very good point, and one that I kind of looked the same in one of the fights that we're going to talk about later on in the show, Yair versus Frankie. I kind of feel the same way. If it was Frankie that fought Gray Maynard years ago, my opinion might be different. So I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, and this is just my initial thought. This, my opinion may swing this or the other way as things are leading up to the fight.
Yeah, we kind of gave our opinion on Verdum versus Overeem pretty thorough, so I'm gonna skip that one. But what do you think about Pettis going back to 155?
Pettis and Miller.
He had a pretty nice run at 155. He won the belt, then he lost a couple. He thought he'd correct that by going to 145, and he didn't have a ton of success. But I also don't think he had a lot of fights, maybe one or two there. I think he went 1-1.
I think the weight cut is a thing that might be rough on him as far as the 145 division, and as guys get older with the metabolism or whatnot, it does become harder to make weight. So it's a logical step for him to go back to a division that he already competed in and did so successfully. May I add?
Yeah, I mean he had more success at 155 than like 145. He came down. I forget who he beat, and then he lost to Holloway.
So without the potential weight cut, he'll have more energy, potentially more strength, more power behind the punches, obviously.
I remember who he beat now. It was Charles Oliveira that also moved up to 155 recently. It's kind of like a trend, man. You're seeing it more and more of guys just going to fight, I think, at closer to their natural weights instead of starving themselves. He's kind of a big guy for 145 pounds.
Yeah, I think it's becoming clear to these guys killing yourself with the weight cut comes with its own ticket price, and sometimes it's not worth it.
That and the IV ban has really changed the game in terms of that.
Yep.
Great. Did you catch any of the boxing matches?
Oh, we had some awesome boxing matches. Walk them through real quick. What last night?
Last week at the London Wembley Stadium, they had Anthony Joshua versus Klitschko, and last night we had Canelo versus Chavez. Two on paper good boxing matches, but only one of them turned out to be really fireworks and epic and good fight. Great fight.
Right? Yeah, that being Klitschko Joshua. So I guess let's start with that one.
Yeah.
Klitschko and Joshua was a little bit of expected. It was a matter of time till we saw Klitschko decline, and I guess the real question was when we were going to see it. And in this fight, we saw hungry, up and coming young lion take on a old, proven veteran and champion of the sport.
Good points. I don't think that this was as much of a decline for Klitschko as it was overall just skill level. What I was impressed with, and a little backstory to this fight, I know I texted you this the other day when we were discussing it, just, friend to friend. But I'll tell the listeners kind of a little backstory on this. Typically, you don't get fights like this in boxing. The top guys don't agree to box each other. And one thing, if you don't like Klitschko's style, one thing you got to take your hat off is he's not like most boxers. He's not going to navigate his way through. He's going to find the best guy, and he's going to try his skills against theirs. And what I was impressed with this one is Anthony Joshua. He's been on the scene for a while. He's the guy that I've been touting for the last 5 years as the next big-time heavyweight. And he's a scary guy. The betting line even showed that it was minus 260 in Joshua's favor to beat Klitschko. And just because, I don't remember if he was an Olympic guy, but he's been great ever since he came into boxing. And the other thing he's got going for him is he's the same size as Klitschko. He's another 6'7" guy, and that was causing Klitschko a little bit of problems. But to Klitschko's credit, he fought a pretty good fight. He even had Joshua in trouble at some times. But at the end of the day, the youth really was the difference, man. 41 years old versus 26, 28 for Joshua, something like that.
Exactly. Let's talk about the fight itself. Like you said, Klitschko had him hurt in the early stages of the fight, and Joshua overcame and kept us cool and got his head back in the game and was able to. I think it was round 9 or 10. No, it was round 11. It was
He knocked him out, I believe, in either 10 or 11. But
that was the
he
very
started
end
he
of the
started
fight.
coming back, and like I don't like again. This was a week ago, so I remember the fight like as it happened. I don't remember what round specific things happened in.
Let's say towards the end, like maybe I think round 8, 9,
Exactly,
10.
but like the fight itself, it started pretty evenly, and it got real interesting real quick. I mean, they were knocking each other down, and I think Joshua got the first knockdown, and then Klitschko went off to knock him down 2 more times. Had him in
Yep.
kind of bad shape during that fight, and around round 7, Joshua started gaining back his speed, kind of gaining more confidence and pressuring the shit out of Klitschko. He started like at first he was kind of gauging himself, you know. I think he wanted to take Klitschko into deep waters, and man, that's one scary heavyweight right there.
Which was a very smart strategy and paid off in the end. I mean, that uppercut that he landed on him was the end of Klitschko. He had him hurt all kinds of ways, and Klitschko couldn't, stay on his feet and defend himself properly there towards the end.
Yeah, I saw a still shot of that uppercut, and Klitschko's neck looks like a damn giraffe. It's just been like outstretched, you know.
Yeah, that's rough,
He
man.
got hit hard, and to Joshua's credit, man, he's a big guy and he's got a lot of power, and he knows how to box well.
Yep, lanky, knows how to use his reach well.
I think the next opponent that they're trying to get him is Anthony Wilder. And knowing Joshua and the way that him and Klitschko got this deal done, you know, took 50-50, wanted to both fight the best guy. You can't say the same thing about Anthony Wilder.
Excuse me, correction, Dante Wilder. You mean?
Yeah,
Deontay.
Deontay Wilder.
I was like, who is Anthony?
He's like 46-0, but
God, yeah,
he's
the American
navigated
prospect.
his career to beat a lot of taxi cab drivers and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
He's not like Anthony Joshua, who's just in there to fight the baddest motherfuckers and
which
create a legacy.
which is exciting because not only was this match good, it also sets up for a potential future bout to unify who really is the baddest man as far as heavyweight boxing contention goes.
Yeah, and Joshua actually, after the fight, he didn't say anything about Wilder. He actually called out Tyson Fury. But I don't know what Tyson Fury's deal is now. He beat Klitschko, then he got into cocaine real bad or something like this,
Yeah.
and then he left the sport, and now he's back, I think. But if he's back, I don't think he beats Joshua, but he does pose different problems than Klitschko did.
It's an interesting call out. That guy being Tyson, he beat Klitschko, was the last guy to beat Klitschko. So,
It's interesting. Where's Tyson's head? Also, like, is he even like boxing anymore?
yeah, like I was going to say, the drug issue and retirement from the sport are all worrying signs, and kind of tell me that this fight wouldn't be very competitive
Yeah, but
at this point.
you can never tell with a gypsy fighter.
Watch out for gypsies, bro. This next fight wasn't as competitive.
No, it was a 12-round blowout by Canelo Alvarez. Canelo displayed his superior skill using
Pretty much everything. Like,
Yeah.
took the words out of your mouth. Sorry.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. Everything in the book he had. I mean, through the uppercuts, the jabs, the left hooks, the right hooks. It looked like a glorified sparring session.
Yeah, hit him with 4-punch combos, 5-punch combos. I mean,
It was just one guy throwing the hammer.
yeah, it
pretty
was
much.
very one-sided fight. And he even gave Chavez opportunities to box him up, and he stood against the ropes only to come back and hit him like 6 more times.
Yeah, a couple talking points out of this that I noticed. Number one is Canelo is really good. He the last person it kind of goes out to how good Floyd was to beat him that night. You know, like people kind of downplay that win, but that was a big win over Canelo, who in my eyes is one of the elite guys, and Mexico's probably the best product right now.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also very interesting that, like the last fight we discussed, this fight also has a future in that they announced Triple G right after this fight happened.
That was my second talking point. Yep. They announced Triple G. They had the whole video ready for him, kind of like WWE does, when they hit your music and you walk out. He sat in the
Yep.
front row the whole fight, and he walked out, and the shit talking was amusing between them because Triple G's like the ultra polite guy, I wish you good luck, and,
We will do our best. I am very excited.
and Canelo, I think, answered him with some his Mexican interpreter. So maybe his Mexican interpreter was wrong, but he's Canelo said something. The crowd started laughing. He says, "Luck is for the mortals." Canelo likes to talk about himself kind of like he's a god, which I find amusing. But at the same time, man, this is not going to be a cakewalk for Triple G. This is going to be, as Triple G said, uh, who's the guy on ESPN now with Stephen A. Smith?
I'm not sure about who you speak of, but this is going to be the biggest test for both of the guys.
Canelo disagrees with that assessment. He said he'll see after the fight, but I don't think it. I also disagree with that assessment. I mean, Triple G is good, but let's not forget he fought Floyd Mayweather.
He did, but at the point of his career, he, I guess, was unfit to beat Floyd.
He was 21 years old.
Yeah, he was very young.
He was probably close to. I mean, Floyd was like 40, and he was 21. So if he was ever going to beat him, it would probably be close to that. I think if they rematched it now, it would. Canelo's been looking really good lately, but then you got to look at the level of opposition. Like Chavez Jr. is, despite his 50-3 record now, he hasn't fought the names. He hasn't made his way like Canelo has, like Triple G has.
And it definitely showed that night.
Oh yeah. He was blown out. It looked like an amateur versus a pro. But this is going to be a much closer fight and a much tougher fight to call. If you would have asked people a year ago, it would have been Triple G hands down. But with the way Canelo has been looking in this past year, it kind of changes people's opinions on that.
Yeah, man. Which brings me to a point. Boxing, with the last two fights put on, pretty big cards, pretty big, high-profile fights. Boxing is experiencing somewhat of a resurgence, which is exciting to see. And both of these outcomes from the last two fights are leading somewhere. There's a potential exciting matchups down the road for the winners of both fights.
I mean, there's always going to be a market for boxing, I believe. But whether two weeks of good fights is a turnaround is yet to be seen. They have a long history of people ducking and dodging fights and not going after the fights that they're supposed to. And I'm not shitting on boxing, but like the truth of the matter is there's very few Klitschko's and there's a lot more Floyd Mayweathers and Manny Pacquiao's.
And I think the way it's set up with the way it gets promoted also plays into some of it. So I was glad to see, they come together 2 weekends back to back. MMA kind of stayed out of the spotlight for a second there to kind of let boxing have its own time there for a second. As in, they didn't want to compete. They didn't want to compete head up.
It worked out like that, but the UFC makes their schedule well in advance. I mean, maybe they saw like, hey, this fight is scheduled, but I think UFC had their schedules prior, so that might be unfair to them.
I do think there is something to that because they schedule things really smartly, like around World Series, around college games, and I think they might have scheduled things around this as well, not to kind of compete.
That's a possibility, but don't they try to keep with the same close to yearly schedule as they did like last year and the year prior, maybe adding in a few events here and there?
They do, and they'll go ahead and they'll compete with Bellator and like regular games and stuff like that, no problem. It's just the big ones, they stay out of the way, it seems.
But regardless, even though we did have some boxing, like I don't watch the prelims of boxing a lot of times. It hasn't been the same for me, man. I'm glad we got MMA back this week.
With the card that's coming up, yeah, for sure. This next one is going to be huge, and we're going to be Really looking forward to talking about it after we come back with the short break.
Shoot the Ones listeners, thanks for joining us again this week. If you'd like to advertise your product or brand to our fans, we can be reached at shoottheonespodcast@gmail.com. That's shoot the 1s podcast@gmail.com. Please follow us on SoundCloud, subscribe to our show on YouTube, and like and share us on Facebook. Thanks again for listening and your loyal support. And now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Dema, those were cool boxing matches, but now we're getting right back into MMA with a sweet card. UFC 211 at the America Airlines Center in Dallas, Texas.
Wow, what a stacked card this is going to be. I was waiting to talk about this card.
Yeah, we've been giddy for a while. This is what I would call the best card of the year.
Thus far?
Thus far, yes.
Yeah, man. Let's start bottom to top, as we usually do. A UFC Fight Pass portion of the card. We have Joachim Christensen versus Gadzumarad Antigulov.
Interesting fight. You probably remember Antigulov as you remember the guy that came in last week, Lima. He came in a little bit fat.
Yes.
He beat Lima in his first UFC fight. He choked him out pretty quickly, which was impressive because Lima's got a background in jiu-jitsu as well. So to be able to get a guy down that quick, I forget how quickly he beat him, but I think it was close to a minute's time or less, and he got him out of there pretty quick. Joachim Christensen, I believe he's a Swede. I might be wrong about that. But he's a good-looking fighter too, man. Good-looking fighter. I've been saying some funny stuff, man. But no, he's a pretty talented guy, you know, with skills everywhere, but mostly in striking. He's mostly a striker.
Has he fought in UFC before?
Christensen, yeah, I think he's got like 3 fights. I'd have to pull up the Sherdog to see who they were against.
No need. Just a question. I'm not familiar with either or, but this is a good little bit of insight about the two fighters. Next in the featherweight division, Gabriel Benitez is going to be fighting Enrique Barzola.
Two good looking.
You done did it again.
Two good prospects. I haven't seen. I've seen all 3 of Barzola's fights. He should probably be 3-0 in the UFC. He's kind of compact guy with a nice striking set. And Benitez is pretty tough. Benitez is coming off a win over Sam Cecilia, I believe a guillotine choke, if I'm not mistaken. And he's pretty good himself. If I had to lean towards one fighter in this one, I would probably be leaning towards Barzola with the way that they've looked in the octagon so far.
Your knowledge about some of these undercard fighters is pretty impeccable.
I won't say all that because these next 2 fights I'm not too familiar with.
Oh, well. Heavyweight division, always exciting. Chase Sherman is facing off against Rashad Coulter.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Rashad Evans and Randy Couture's kid there.
Do you know anything about Chase Sherman?
Yes. He's, I think, 0-2 in the UFC. He lost 1 to that boxer. Let me pull up his record real fast, dude. Oh, Dimitri. Oh, hey, how come? I guess which one's more up to date? Sherdog or Wikipedia? Sherdog has a different fight for Chase Sherman.
Well, here's what happened. Yariz Danio was supposed to fight Dmitry Pobirezhets.
The Ukrainian fella.
Yeah.
That fell through?
That fell through. Danio pulled out because he was injured. And in turn, Pobirezhets was removed from card For undisclosed reasons, it was replaced by fellow newcomer Rashad Coulter.
Do you know anything about the hometown Ukrainian, the
Yeah, I
hometown
was looking
guy?
forward to the Ukrainian fighting. I was like, I was glancing over this, and I was a bit confused when I didn't see his name on the card anymore.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about Rashad Evans and Randy Couture's wild child there. But no, now I looked up Chase Sherman's last two fights, and he's had like
It's
strikers.
it's Coulter, not Couture.
Yeah, it was pretty damn close, 1 letter difference. Chase Sherman, he's 0-2 in the UFC against Justin Ledet and Walt Harris, and the thing that he's shown in those two fights is that one, he's not as skilled as the other heavyweights in the UFC. But two, he's got a chin on him, man. He takes a lot of punishment before he gets knocked out. Like Walt Harris beat him up pretty solid for 2 rounds and wasn't able to get him out of there until like the second half of the second round. And Justin Ledet, who's has some professional boxing experience, just put a beat down on him for 3 rounds. And his main skill is his chin and heart, which isn't going to get you very far at the highest level.
Yeah, I'm just disappointed. Our hometown, or our Ukrainian homie Dmitry isn't on this card.
Hey, he's got your name too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a little sad. I was looking forward to Dimitri. In the next fight we have Jared Gordon versus Michael Quinones. And for me to try to analyze this fight that I don't know either fighter is going to be pretty tough. So I'm going to pass this one to you.
I like you. I don't know much about, so I think it would be fair to just go into the next one, which is the women's strawweight fight.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've seen Quinones fight before, and he looked like a solid prospect. I don't know anything about Jared Gordon. But yeah, like you said, let's move on to the girls' fight because I do know about these.
Jessica Aguilar versus Courtney Casey.
Yeah, two strong girls. Courtney Casey's had a little bit more UFC success than Jessica Aguilar, but Jessica Aguilar, if they had a women's Hall of Fame, she would probably go down in it. Beating Megumi Fuji, she beat Zoila Frosto. I think she beat Zoila Frosto. I think Zoila Frosto might have got a bullshit decision over her.
She
But
has a win over Carla Esparza.
yeah, I mean she's a really solid fighter, who has had tough row of opponents in the UFC. I think like Claudia Gadelha, she just recently lost to, and man, fighting Gadelha, you gotta bring your lunchbox, you know.
That was her only fight in UFC.
That's it.
If I'm looking at her record, so she came out of World Series of Fighting and Bellator, and she was on like a 8 fight win streak.
Yeah, she's a good fighter, but how long is Gadelha her only UFC fight? How long ago was this?
This was UFC 190, so August of 2015.
So she hasn't fought professionally in 2 years.
Yep.
Let's see what kind of role that has to play in things. I mean, 2 years is a long time, and only some guys are able to do it like they haven't missed a beat, like Dominic Cruz. But most people are not.
Now she does have a ton of grappling accolades, which means she could have stayed active, just not in a MMA capacity.
Courtney Casey, a little bit more green fighter, but man, she's a strong girl. She's gonna at least be able. If she doesn't have the strength advantage, she's gonna be very close to the same strength as Jessica Aguilar in there.
Yeah, and a bit more of an active fighter. They both share, their last opponent, their last loss coming from Claudia Gadelha.
And did you have anything else to add on that one?
No, I think this is a good matchup. Good one for Aguilar to get back in there after like a 2-year layoff.
I didn't realize she was gone that long, man. I'm excited to see her back. I favor her, but who knows what she looks like you said, after 2 years of being gone.
Yeah, this one would be tough to call. So if I was a betting man, I might consider leaving that one alone.
Yeah, that, or if Casey is too big of an underdog in my eyes, I might throw a couple units on her.
Unless, like you said, there's value in certain pick.
Or like say Aguilar comes in as the underdog, I'm gonna definitely bet on her. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, if it's even, leave it alone. I suppose.
Hmm. That's why a lot of these fights like this, to be honest with the Shoot the Ones listeners, this is the first time I've really in depth looked at the card. Probably the same for Dema. I did look at this card like 2 3 months ago, and I was like, "Whoa, damn, those are some good fights." But I never quite examined them, and they still don't have betting lines on them. So, with the predictions, you got to take them with a grain of salt this week.
Yeah. I've looked at it and I've been pretty much salivating over this card for the last few weeks. So I've looked up and down, and I pretty much by halfway through, things start getting a lot more interesting.
And I kind of misspoke. Ooh, actually, no, they got bet lines for all of them now. They put bet lines up today, apparently.
Cool. We're right on time.
Let me quickly then throw them out. The ones that we already went over. Antagulov is a 365 favorite over Christensen, who's plus 275. Benitez is minus 235, so I was taking the underdog in that one. Barzola is plus 185. Oh wow, Chase Sherman is minus 165. Rashad Culture plus 135. Jared Gordon minus 160. Quinones plus 130. And Courtney Casey's coming in as the favorite in this one, minus 130 to a even $1,
Hmm.
which I see that line. I think about putting a couple on Jessica Aguilar, to be honest.
It might be something worth looking at.
And then our next fight, James Vick versus Marco Polo Reyes. Nice to see James Vick back, and Polo Reyes has a nice little boxing style of his own.
Yeah, this is a good matchup. I mean, you got Vic coming off of a submission win against Abel Trujillo. I believe it was a Darce choke back in February. And
That's the one that Abel failed for pot two, right?
yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly the one. And Marco Polo Reyes, not very familiar with Polo Reyes. Like you said, accomplished boxer.
Yeah, he's got a boxing style, and I think he's won his last two in the UFC. I'm gonna double check that to make certain. But he looks like a really solid fighter. This betting line doesn't do him justice. Minus 400 James Vick to plus 300 Marco Polo Reyes. Yeah, his last fights, he got a split decision win over Jason Novelli, and he beat the other Dong Hun Kim by KO punches round three, 152. You know there's two Dong Hun Kims, believe it or not.
Wow.
They both fought on that card too to make it even more confusing for people. But
Way to go, Korea.
yeah, this isn't the stun guns Don Hun Kim.
This is the other.
This is the fuck. What weight class are they? Hold on, I'm gonna edit that part. This is the 155 pound. I'm gonna give myself some more space to edit that. This is the 155 pound Don Hong Kim.
Gotcha.
But yeah, with that betting line being the way it is, I would like I think in my head James Vick is gonna win this fight, you know.
Yeah.
But I would put a couple dollars on Marco Polo Reyes, man. Plus 300. That's and his boxing ability. Only problem is, and the reason why I think James Vick is gonna win this fight, Dima, is he's good everywhere. He's a scrappy submission guy. You know, he's got really long arms. He makes things awkward, and he's fought guys like Marco Polo Reyes before, and with his length, he gives them a lot of problems, and he kind of is able to take the fight where he wants it to go. So I would, if I had to just pick a winner, I would go with James Vick. I think he's probably going to win this fight.
I pretty much agree with you there. Vic is a more well-rounded fighter here, and I think he gets it done. His length might pose a challenge for Reyes there as well. I I'm looking at his record, and I mean he's only has one loss against Daniel Dariush, and he's beat anybody pretty much everyone else. I think he's 10-1 or 9-1. So yeah, I am favoring Vic here as well.
Man, this fight, man. I'm looking at these betting lines that they just put up, and I'm gonna go home and put a lot of money on some of these underdogs, man. They got some good underdogs
Yeah,
on this
when you were
card.
going through this, I was like, wait, some of these are wild.
Yeah, like listen to this next one, Jotko versus David Branch. Jotko is the minus 185 favorite. I was thinking Branch was gonna be like a 2-1 favorite in this fight, but I mean Jotko's been awesome in the UFC though, like 7-1, real contender.
And Branch is coming over from
Branch is
World
coming
Series of
as the
Fighting.
champ over there, and just been annihilating two weight classes for a couple of years there.
So you would expect him to be like a heavy, heavy favorite.
Mm, this is a guy that in his first run in the UFC lost to Gerald Harris and a couple guys, but he he's one of the best in the world, man. He's got good training, but you can say the same about Jotko. I thought it would be an even money line, to be honest, now in hindsight.
Yeah, and Harris is also one of those fights that can knock anybody out.
And I guess plus 150 and minus 185. I think Jotko, the thing he has on going on his side in that fight, Dema, is he's got real he's got the youth factor to him. He's good everywhere. He can move around, and he's not going to get tired in there in the third round. But David Branch is a veteran of over 30 fights, I believe. And I don't remember ever seeing him tired. Also, so this one's going to be fireworks. Hard one to predict. I'm still leaning with Branch even after seeing that line.
Yeah, veteran, young lion. I'm leaning Branch as well. Like I said, I'm kind of high on him. He's coming from World Series of Fighting. He dominated everybody there. He was a champion.
I'll probably throw at least 10 units on that one.
Right on.
Whew. Next fight is gonna be fireworks as well, man. Two of the real up and comers. What division is that again? Is 155. The two.
Featherweight.
Yes, you're right. 145.
145.
145. Jason Knight versus Chaz Skelly. Both on pretty good runs. Both look to be dangerous.
Yeah, both up and comers that have looked impressive as hell lately. Um, as I forgot who of the two said that, but they said there's only room for one redneck fighter in the 145 division, and
Probably
I.
Knight. Actually, no. That was Chaz Skelly that said that. I remember hearing that too.
And yeah, I thought that was a funny analogy. And yeah, both guys are gonna bring it. This is an exciting fight.
Yeah, these are two alpha guys. Jason Knight, last one we talked about on Shoot the Ones show was Alex Bruce Leroy Caceres, where he kind of dominated him and got the submission. And before that, he beat Dan Hooker and Jim Ayers. And his first UFC fight was against Kawajiri, which he lost a unanimous decision. And if you know anything about Kawajiri, is he can wrestle and he can chain wrestle really well, and that's kind of was the story of that fight. Nevertheless, Jason Knight, big prospect, and
It looked impressive. Chess Kelly, is coming off of two wins, one against Chris Grutzenmacher,
mhm.
and a win over Maximo Blanco as well.
Yeah, you remember that fight? That was crazy. That fight ended in like 14 seconds, I think.
Yeah, he choked him out with something crazy, like
I
a head
think
and
he,
arm
I
or
think,
an
I think he,
anaconda.
I think he ran across and like kicked him or did something like real quick. I think it was a knee. Yeah, he ran across with a knee, and he hurt Blanco and like submitted him right after that. It was really sick. It was really nasty.
Yeah, I'm looking. It was. He says it was. He did it in under 20 seconds, 19 seconds on the fight.
Yeah, I've jinxed fights in the past, but I really think that this is gonna be a fireworks fight, man. These guys are both gonna come to scrap and looking for ways to win.
Yeah, they both kind of had that attitude to, go in there and throw down. So
Yeah, they'll probably push each other at the weigh-ins and all that jazz.
yeah.
Two real scrappy guys.
Now
Uh,
this next one is should rightfully be up there with the main event. However, this is headlining the preliminary card on FX. This is lightweight bout Eddie Alvarez versus Dustin the Diamond Poirier.
yeah, I guess since we have bet lines, did you have a prediction on the last one before we go into this?
Probably Jason Knight. He's fought a higher caliber of guys.
Yeah.
in my opinion, and I think he. If I had to give it to either or, I would edge towards Jason Knight.
Yeah, this is the fifth underdog I've picked in a row. I'm also going with Jason Knight on this one.
He's the underdog.
Yeah, he's even money to Chad Skelly minus 130.
Okay.
So pretty close.
Both tough as hell and looked impressive as hell. Um,
But
I also think Jason Knight has been a little bit more active. Skelly has fought, only one time, I think, last year.
hmm but like you said, you announced Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier as the main event of the prelim card. I think it's a good fight. It's the fight Eddie Alvarez has been asking for.
It's a fantastic fight.
Yeah, and Dustin Poirier is a slight favorite, minus 120 to Eddie Alvarez, minus 110. So
Wow.
pretty much even line. Um, Dustin Poirier's looked really good lately. Who was his last opponent where he hurt? Was it Jim Miller? I think it was.
Michael Johnson or Jim Miller?
I think it was Jim Miller. No, no.
It was Jim Miller. You're right, and he lost to Johnson.
Yeah, he hurt his foot and continued fighting like a beast with a hurt foot. Like he just fought really smart. And Poirier's, I believe, getting to that point where you could consider him a gritty veteran. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And Eddie Alvarez has been a grizzly veteran.
Yep.
Eddie Alvarez he's done everything in every promotion. So it's good to see him after that loss to Conor McGregor, to see what his head's like, if he's still the same fighter that knocked out RDA, that had all those wars, that beating up Shinya Aoki back in the day, had wars with Gilbert Melendez. If he's still that guy, but Poirier, he's a tough puzzle himself. If Poirier's on, he's a little bit quicker boxer. I'm not sure if he's a more technical guy, but he's also got submissions that Eddie's got to look out for.
Those are all good points. I think both guys are very dangerous strikers, and if Eddie was smarter, he would probably consider going wrestling heavy strategy into this fight.
Yeah, that's the one thing I was gonna say. Eddie is gonna have the wrestling advantage. He has a wrestling advantage almost every time out there. I don't remember too many guys having a wrestling advantage. I think Gilbert Melendez and him, it kind of was even.
Yeah.
But just about everybody else that he's faced, he's had a wrestling advantage. Even RDA.
So this is where I would give him the edge. If he goes in there and fights a smart fight, I think he has one clear advantage in his wrestling.
Yeah. And I remember weeks ago, I was saying that I was probably going to stick with Eddie. I changed my prediction for this one. I'm rolling with Dustin Poirier. And here's my reason, Dima. I think he's going to win because I think the speed difference is going to play a role when they're striking. And what I've noticed about Poirier in this later part of his career is he's a lot more ruthless in there. Like, he's going in there to hurt people and not play nice. And when you got that kind of mentality, Poirier, who's hungry,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to try to prove a point versus Eddie, and I think he has a good chance to win this fight.
Very close fight. If I had to make a pick, I would stick with Eddie. And like I said, the wrestling thing is something I'm looking at, and I'm looking at this fight kind of similar to Michael Johnson. I think Eddie Alvarez is a slightly better Michael Johnson, and he's been in there and won the belt, has the experience of a champion, and I think he edges Poirier here a little bit.
Do you put any stock into how embarrassing that fight with Conor McGregor was? I mean, Eddie Alvarez, to his credit, has looked good all the way throughout his career. But man, for a guy, with his what do you call it? Not arrogance, but confidence.
Yeah.
A guy with his confidence level, do you think that plays a role? I mean, just getting completely embarrassed in front of a good portion of the world, I mean, this was one of the top 5 most seen fights in the UFC history. I think that's could be said for all Conor's fights from here on out. But
I think there's some pressure there for sure. And it's going to be very interesting to see how he comes back, considering the results of his last fight. Now, we've seen people come back in a spectacular fashion before, but some people don't take L's as well.
Exactly. Man, I can't believe a lot of these are prelim fights. What an epic card so far. And man, it just gets better as we hit the main event. And we'll go over those fights right after this break.
Hey guys, it's Dema. I wanted to thank you for listening to Shoot the Ones podcast. If you guys have any questions or have any comments, please reach out to us at shoottheonespodcast@gmail.com, or you can leave your comments across any of our social media platforms. Again, thanks for listening, and now back to the show. We are going to discuss the main card, which is, as what I like to refer to on this podcast, the meat and potatoes of our show. The main card of UFC 211 is looking stacked and exciting as hell. So without further ado, the first matchup on the card is a flyweight division match. Henry Cejudo versus Sergio Pettis in what looks to be the biggest test of Sergio Pettis' career.
Yeah, Dima, awesome main card. I mean, you look at all these guys and the two gals, they're all ranked, top 5 easy in their division. The only one that's arguable is maybe Sergio Pettis, but I believe he's sneaking up there on top 5 in his division.
I would say even the fights that aren't championship fights on this card are division movers, for sure.
Yeah, every fight on this main card means something to that particular division. The first fight, like you said, was a flyweight fight between Henry Cejudo versus Sergio Pettis. A little background: Henry Cejudo is an Olympic medalist and just overall badass. He had a really good fight with Joseph Benavidez last time out, where a couple people gave him the nod and thought he won the decision. I believe the decision went to Joseph Benavidez, a split decision, if I'm not mistaken. And Sergio Pettis has looked pretty good recently. Getting wins over, I believe, John Moraga and somebody else.
That's correct. And yeah, like you said, he's looked really, really good. He's coming into his own. The key for this fight is going to be how can Sergio avoid the elite level grappling of Henry Cejudo, and how he can stay away from the takedown, essentially.
Yeah, and looking at the betting line for this one, they came out with the main card betting line like a week before they came out with all these undercard ones. Right now, Henry Cejudo is minus 450 to plus 325. Sergio Pettis, which is a little bit like James Vick versus Polo Reyes in the sense I think Henry Cejudo is the better fighter. I think his wrestling and his Golden Gloves boxing and striking, unpredictable striking, are a real problem in that division. But to see Sergio Pettis as a 300 underdog, I might put a couple units and just hope I get lucky. I mean, he's not a scrub. He can avoid the takedowns pretty well. And he is a Pettis after all, so that means he's a striker,
Yeah, and I would favor him in the striking department in this fight.
I don't know about all that.
I think he has more tools. I think he uses his kicks more effectively. I think he's a rangier fighter. He uses long strikes more effectively as opposed to Henry is, not as variety. He doesn't have as much of a variety.
Have you seen a lot of Henry's fights?
I did. But I just walk away with the impression he's really wrestling heavy. I mean, he does everything to set up the wrestling.
But in his fights, I mean, his wrestling is elite, no question about it. But in his fights, he chooses to use mostly striking, and he's pretty damn good at it. Even against Joseph Benavidez, who we both agree is the clear number two in that division. I mean, if they had a championship for the second place, he'd be a long time reigning champ. He gave Benavidez everything he could handle in the stand up. So I think there's something to be said about that, and the fact that he's been doing this as a kid. It's not like he's one of those wrestlers that just got into striking and is real awkward. There were a lot of those guys like Matt Hamels, and that just kind of had the brute strength. Johnny Hendricks is another one that's not originally a striker. Maybe Chael Sonnen.
I guess he's more traditional in his approach, whereas your Pettis would be way more unorthodox, more creative, and I guess that's where I'm giving him the edge.
Yeah, Pettis does come from the Duke Rufus camp, which they're a bunch of strikers in there, and they're all killers. They all have their kind of interesting, unique take on striking, and Sergio Pettis is, one of those guys also. And like I said, I favor Cejudo at that betting line. Like last week, apparently the general public is putting a lot of money on Henry Cejudo because the line didn't open up like that. It opened up at like minus 350 for Cejudo, and I think plus 275 for Pettis. So in the last week, it's moved a whole dollar.
Which is more in line with how I would perceive this fight.
Yeah, with the original line.
Yeah,
I agree. I think what the bet line is trying to tell you is that Cejudo's going to have a huge wrestling advantage, which I'm not positive is going to be the case. I think that it might have a little bit more stand-up than Henry's anticipating, which could lead to an interesting fight.
I'm thinking if Cejudo chooses to keep it standing, he's playing with fire here, and he ultimately needs to go to his roots and impose his, wrestling game plan.
Yeah, I think he's going to have an advantage, and maybe this is why the line is that way. I think he's going to have an advantage in the striking also. I might be unique viewpoint on that, but I think he's going to have the wrestling advantage and the striking advantage. But this is MMA where you fight with the 4-ounce gloves,
And
so,
you also would be preferred you fight to your advantage. So for him to fight there with striking, it wouldn't be the smartest option.
Yeah, but the fight always starts on the feet, and Henry doesn't seem to be afraid of being on the feet.
I guess I have a little bit more respect for the Pettis camp.
Yeah, I mean that's
as far as striking.
I have a lot of respect for Duke Rufus and them too, but Cejudo trains with the best as well. I forget what team he's on. I think it might be American Top Team now or something like that.
Interesting.
I don't want to slander his name.
As far as the outcome, I agree with you. The result, I'm leaning Cejudo myself. But there might be some value in putting some money on Sergio.
Sorry, his team is fight ready, and he's an Olympic gold medalist.
Yes, he is.
In the Beijing, and he won the Pan American Games.
What a beast. Speaking of beasts, we have Frankie Edgar versus Yair Rodriguez in the next fight.
And this is one of those sneaky fights that I'm almost as excited about this one as the main event. I'm really thrilled about this fight because Yair, he looks like a star to me. I mean, when he does interviews, he sounds like he's got the mentality of a real, old school fighter and a real star to be. But Frankie's the real deal. Frankie's proven it. He's won his championship. When this fight was announced, I was originally leaning heavy towards Frankie. Not heavy, but I was leaning towards Frankie. I think I've listened to interviews and stuff. I've changed my mind with this pick. I think I'm leaning towards Yair for this fight. He's just a real hungry guy, but man, Frankie's been in there with everybody, Dema, and he's come out on top more times than not.
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting matchup, and it's very It's very close to. It's very similar to the fight that we just discussed, in that you have Yair Rodriguez, who's an up and comer and has his biggest test ahead of him coming up in this fight
by
against
far.
Frankie Edgar, who is a veteran. Has fought the who's who of the several divisions. A former champion as well. So
Never been knocked out.
yeah, I mean, dude, this fight is it's a close to 50-50 to me.
And that's what the bet line is pretty much saying. Minus 150 Frankie Edgar. You kind of have to make him the favorite. I mean, he's a legend.
Yeah,
I mean, if he were to end his career today, he'd go down as a first ballot Hall of Famer, legend. One of the best lightweights in the history of the sport. Even though this fight is not a lightweight bout, this is a featherweight bout.
145.
Yeah, he moved down to featherweight like 8 fights ago, a while ago.
Yeah, yeah.
He fought Aldo a while ago, and that was when he moved down. But yeah, he's fought everybody. He's had his troubles versus Aldo. He's coming off of a loss, but Frankie never has problems coming off of losses. It's not like he's out there getting knocked out either. So I think we're still going to see the best Frankie Edgar. I mean, no doubt about that. But man, Yair is a young, hungry lion. How are you looking at? What are your predictions on this one, Dima?
Well, real quick, I think Frankie fought what's his name? Jeremy Stevens?
That was his last fight, yeah, and he outworked Jeremy. So he's already come off a loss. So now he's coming off a win.
Exactly.
Good correction. Yeah, he did beat Jeremy Stevens. In the fight, Jeremy hurt him at one point, but Frankie won good 75-80% of that fight.
Yeah. I mean, Jeremy landed on him, and any punch Jeremy lands on you can hurt you.
Yeah, he's a powerful guy.
So, but overall, Frankie just moved around so well, avoided most of that shit while landing combinations of his own, and
And that's what's gonna make this fight a little bit tough on Yair. Like you said, it's his biggest test by far of his career. I mean, this is nothing like that BJ Penn fight that he just had.
yeah, Frankie just moves around so well, and he's so technically sound.
Wrestling is great.
He's still very fast, and like you said, wrestling. In comparison with the last fight, I think wrestling is going to be a major key in this fight too. If playing with fire against a young Yair Rodriguez, striking with him might not be the smartest strategy, and Frankie could go and set up the wrestling, and his quick switch up from striking down and switching it into a takedown might be something he wants to do here.
Especially, he's got really good ground and pound. I mean, Frankie Edgar is really good everywhere. And it's going to be interesting, like you said, Yair likes to utilize a lot of kicks.
Yeah.
And they're really effective kicks, and he'll throw one after the other. And Frankie would be wise to use that to take him down, I think. Very wise.
Yeah. So, yeah, very close fight. Your classic young against the old guard type of deal going on. So, I'm really excited about this. Almost as excited as the next fight we were going to talk about.
It's funny, yeah, with the next fight and this one. It's funny how a lot of these fights I'm switching up my picks like as it's getting close. I'm thinking more about
It's
the
acceptable.
fights, and I'm
You know,
switching a lot of these picks.
you look at the lines, you see what's valuable, and I like to see how they come up during the fight week, the face off, the weigh-ins. Maybe hear an interview or two how they're feeling.
Yeah, I agree. Did you want to introduce the next fight?
Sure. Welterweight division in a low-key main event fight for me. Damian Maia versus Jorge Masvidal. I gotta have my low-key main card. That's not a main. Main event. That's not a main event fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd say, man, all four of these could be main events, like the Frankie Edgar, Yair, Maya, Masvidal, Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Andrade, and of course the rematch with Miocic Santos. But this fight is particularly interesting because Jorge Masvidal is an old school gangster fighter, been everywhere, done everything. And Damian Maia we've talked about him a lot in the past. So he's one of Shoot the One's favorite fighters because he imposes his will. He always does his game plan against guys that know what he wants to do, and they just can't stop it.
He just still does it anyways.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I thought with Damian Maia's history and his successes, he would be the clear favorite in this one. The bet line does not say that. He's actually underdog slightly, plus 105 to Masvidal minus 135.
That's very interesting that people are perceiving it that way. I
It's
would
not the people. That's pretty much the original betting line. So that's what casinos
because
and
it just came out,
the
right?
general public. Well, it came out a week ago. That one.
Okay.
It moved 5 cents. Actually, people have been betting George Masvidal. It was minus 130 to plus $1. So I kind of see why people are predicting that because Masvidal being a wrestler, he's a bitch to get on the ground. If you've watched him fight and what he did to Cerrone last time out was also pretty scary.
Let me tell you something about this fight. This is one of those where, I thought I would have my mind made up about who I'm gonna have. I still don't.
That's how I was.
As soon as it's getting closer to the fight, and I figure I'd have something,
That's
kind of in my
exactly
mind.
that's
Nope.
exactly what I was talking about. With
Nope,
this one.
both guys have a solid chance in my mind. It's a 50-50 fight like the last one, and I hate being this way. I want to have a more of a solid prediction and outcome here.
It's a tough one to call.
If I had to, Maya, but dude, it's so close, and I'm a huge Masvidal fan too. So
I switched my pick to Masvidal just because. I'm thinking, despite how nasty Maya is when he grabs you, Masvidal's going to be really aware of that and not allow him to get the back. But you saw what he did to Condit last time out. And
yeah,
Maya has been on one heck of a roll. And to be honest, I think he would be favored against Wonder Boy and Woodley, possibly. Well, maybe not
It's a
Woodley.
terrible matchup for a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
But this is a terrible matchup for him in return. Whereas Masvidal is just a beast.
But great fight, man. Arguably the best jiu-jitsu player to ever compete in MMA versus just overall gangster, man. Started, he got his come up fighting YouTube guys. And then he fought like in every division in casinos and stupid shit like that.
He opened up the Bellator.
Yeah, I mean, this guy has fought everywhere
Yeah.
and made a name for himself, become a scary boxer in that division. And last time out was one of his biggest wins versus Cerrone. I mean, he really pieced Cerrone up in that fight.
Yeah, man, that was a hell of a performance.
And he called for this fight, actually. He called for it, and he got it.
So yeah, that's another thing. The fights he calls for, he sees something that he wants to do, and
Yeah, he called for the Cerrone fight.
he imposes his will in the fights he calls.
Yeah. But Damian Maia's not a guy that a lot of people impose their will against. The only guy that I remember getting a clear-cut victory was Anderson Silva. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's been other ones. I think Rory McDonald beat him. Yep, Rory got 2 rounds versus Damian Maia came in and really controlled the grappling
Did
in
a
the
thing in
first
the first round and then lost.
And they lost. And this fight might be a little bit similar to that because Maia's getting up there in age. His gas tank is not the same. So that's something you want to keep in mind. If it goes past the first round, Masvidal might start gaining more and more of an edge. I mean, Masvidal's not one that tires. Not a guy. That's something I always keep in mind when I place bets. If you've tired before, I'm going to store that in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's some guys like even Ben Henderson, I'm not a huge fan of him, but he'll go and go and go and go for 5 rounds. Frankie Edgar's another one of those.
Yep.
There's some guys that you could trust to go for the whole time, no matter if it's 3 or 5 rounds.
Yeah.
Even Rory McDonald is one of those guys. But with Damian Maia, you've seen him have a suspect gas tank in the past.
As our one of our favorites, Boss Rutan, likes to say, cardio is key. Is one of the best attributes.
And that's why the Diaz's run fucking triathlons and shit, man. They want to be on that top edge of cardio. They don't want to, like, when you're getting tired, that's when they want to be coming on.
Yeah, that's when you can have all the technique in the world, but if you can't keep it up if you can't breathe.
That's something I noticed even about soccer. Like when I was at my best playing soccer was when my cardio was the best. And what I would do is I would just kind of lollygag around for the first 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah, but then you could crank it up, whereas everybody else would peter out.
And then everybody's tired, and I'm 100% just getting it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of these fighters do that. They try
huge advantage.
It's kind of what Joshua did to Klitschko.
Yeah.
They stay in there, and they drag them into deep water and see what they're really about.
And Jorge Masvidal has been known to do that. for sure.
That's definitely part of his fighting style. So I'm tentatively gonna stick with Jorge in this one. But I never really liked to bet against Damian Maya, man. He's something else.
I just I'm I'm rooting for Maya really here. I think if he loses, they're gonna bury him
Yeah.
again. He's never gonna see the top of the division because they for some reason they just like to undermine the jiu-jitsu guys.
Yeah. My favorite win of his, and it was against one of my favorite fighters, against Chael Sonnen, man. That shit was epic. How he fucking flipped him.
He hit
And,
him with a toss. That
yeah.
was I actually posted this on Reddit the other day. He hit him with a knee, then he hit him with a judo trip, and he went and mounted him real slick like right after that. And shortly the triangle came. But yeah, that was super sweet.
And recently, his control over Gunnar Nelson was really impressive, also, who a lot of people respect in the grappling world.
Oh yeah, he just handled his
Damian Maia
his shit in
made him
that fight.
made him look like a child compared to him in grappling.
Yep.
And which is fair because the only person I believe to be on his level, or the only people on his level in the UFC and grappling, and I think they're both still below him, are Jacare and Verdun.
Yep.
I don't think anybody else. Maybe early on Royce Gracie, but I don't think Royce even compares to those other two I mentioned, or Paul Harst even. Royce just
Not
was a little
quite.
bit earlier.
You got that right. Either way, man, what a fight.
Yep, and then we got two championship fights coming up.
Yeah, Joanna champion, Jessica Andrade, this the first championship bout of the night. Um, yeah, man, I'm always excited to see Joanna fight. Like she's a vicious striker.
Yeah, and she's got what on paper seems to be her toughest opponent yet as a champion. The bet line is minus 185 for Jajic. I try to say her name real quick so I
You've
don't mess it up.
check.
Jun Jajic. And Andrade, who's been on her own little streak, recently coming off a win over Angela Hill, is coming in at plus 150. This is the women's strawweight for the women's strawweight title. I'm favoring Joanna Champion a little bit in this one. But man, Jessica, like we talked about in her fight versus Angela Hill, she's probably the best female strawweight when she gets them against the fence. She's like one of those boxers that when they get up in the clinch, they're real scary. They start unloading punches, but when you got them in range, you can do a little bit more. So I think this is going to be a fight of Joanna, trying to keep it at range, trying to use her jab, use kicks, and while Jessica is going to be more of trying to get in close, dirty box, and really put her power on her.
Hmm.
Joanna has been hurt in versus Carolina, I believe. Carolina hurt her a couple times in that fight, and I think Jessica's going to be leaning on her power a little bit. Um, I think Joanna should be a little bit more of a favorite in this fight. I'm personally going to bet on Joanna in this one. But I do see avenues in which Jessica can become the new champion. I don't think it's an unwinnable fight for her.
Well, interesting take. Jessica is a really good fighter. I see that, and her performance against Angela Hill was really solid. However, I don't see her posing any challenges to Joanna that she hasn't seen before. Like you said, her ability to do some damage against the cage is something Joanna can neglect by circling away and continuing to counter. But it's a good competitive fight. Jessica is the best fighter that Joanna hasn't fought yet, and it should be competitive. She's a solid number five. She's there for a reason. I just think Joanna's such a beast. We see a very similar situation with that with Demetrius Johnson, where you see a champion so dominant, he just reigns, confidently reigns supreme over the division for a while.
Yeah, what's impressed me about Joanna in her recent fights is she's pretty confident off her back. And for somebody that's a Muay Thai person, that says a lot. And that she went to a lot of people shitted on her for this, for leaving her team that she's been with forever to go to AKA. But I actually commend her on that. It's rare that you see a champion looking to get better constantly, whether that's switching camps, whatever it means, but getting better still, and at such a rapid pace. Um, my take on it is I think Jessica Andrade is a little bit like Claudia Gadelha, not as good grappling, not as physically strong, but probably the second strongest girl, one in that division, and the second strongest that Joanna's faced.
Hmm.
So that's gonna play a role. But I do find her striking to be a lot better
A
than
lot more technical.
than Claudia's.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, and if we remember correctly, Claudia gave Joanna trouble for 2 rounds, a lot of trouble, and then she gassed, and Joanna kind of imposed her will,
Hmm.
and had that epic, won the next 3 rounds and that epic comeback. However, what makes this fight interesting to me is Jessica Andrade has a little bit better gas tank than Claudia, I believe, and she's also strong, and she's got a lot of the same skills. So I don't know. I'm interested to see if she can extend that 2 rounds into 3 rounds and possibly get a win.
Hmm.
But like you said, man, Joanna poses a lot of problems herself. Her Muay Thai is slick. I mean, it's up there with the men's as one of the best strikers just in the UFC, men or women. And that says a lot. That says a lot, especially with how young the women's game is.
For sure. With everything said, both fighters, their striking is their clear forte. So we are going to see a fireworks kickboxing match. Pretty much it is expected here.
Yeah, what are Jessica's credentials on the ground?
I will tell you right now.
Oh, purple belt.
You beat me to it. Purple belt. Piranha Velatudo.
Yep, she's a purple belt.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, solid ground game. From both of them. As it should be. Every top 10 fighter should have a well-rounded skill set in order to compete.
Yeah, Jessica Andrade is she's actually moved down to strawweight, and that's part of the reasoning that she's got the number 5 rank and is fighting for the championship. She's probably better than some of those girls in front of her, and I don't think that's a fair ranking to her. It's not like she's a legitimate number 5. She's probably a legit 2 or 3. Claudia, in my opinion, is also up there. I mean, she's a really good fighter. She just needs to work on the gas tank to be able to beat somebody like Joanna, who's going to be in there for 5 rounds with good cardio.
Yeah, exciting fights. Both of them strikers. It's pretty much guaranteed to be a fireworks stand-up kickboxing match. Like I said.
So we're both leaning with Joanna.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
gotta go with the champ. Champ.
And finally, in our main event, the contesting the heavyweight championship of the world, Stipe Miocic versus Junior Dos Santos, or what does Joey Diaz call Miocic?
Stiopic.
Yeah, Stiopic versus Dos Anjos.
Indeed. Yeah, man. Cool fight. It's a rematch from a fight they had a couple of years back, which was kind of a bit of a controversial yet close decision, where they
It was a great fight.
Yeah, they gave the fight to Junior in a really, really, really close fight.
Yeah, it was a great fight. I remember afterwards thinking Stipe won, but one of those where afterwards I also thought, if it went to Junior Dos Anjos, I can't really be upset.
Yeah, I mean both guys had a round apiece, and it was like one of those where who do you give the
Yeah, it's
closer
really
contested
what's your
round to?
preference?
So now they get five rounds to work with, and it's for a championship belt.
Yeah, exactly. And man, Miocic has been on quite a streak, and I believe if he wins this championship, does that make 2 defenses or 3?
That's 3 now.
3. So I believe he would hold the all-time record, believe it or not, for defenses if he won this fight.
Wow.
All-time UFC. Imagine that's like 20 years almost.
That's pretty crazy how frequently the belt changed hands in the heavyweight division. I didn't quite realize until I heard that statistic.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked by that statistic as well. I believe the one that's had it the longest was probably, I think, Brock Lesnar and Tim Sylvia. Believe it or not,
I was like,
I
surely
might be
Kane. I
wrong.
thought I thought
Oh, Cain
Kane might have
Velasquez.
been the guy. He
Yeah, but
beat Brock,
I
and then
think he's
he.
always had one defense every time. But yeah, in my eyes, Kane is probably
That's
still the
rough.
best of them. I think Kane probably can beat both of these guys that are in the main event. Well, he can obviously beat Junior Dos Anjos. He proved that to the world a number of times. But I think he could beat Stipe as well. With that being said, man, Stipe looked great versus Overeem. And if that fighter comes out, Junior's going to have a pretty tough night. But Junior is one of the best heavyweight boxers, like just straight up hands boxers I think we've seen in MMA. And Stipe also is a Golden Gloves boxer, great hands, powerful hands.
Hmm.
So this makes for an interesting rematch. I mean, the boxing is going to be there. They're going to come at different angles, and who knows, man? One shot can end it at heavyweight.
Yeah. That's a very good assessment. I am. One thing I'm looking at is JDS. It has probably a lot more wear and tear on his body at this point in his career than Stipe Miocic, and yeah, it's been a while since they fought for that first time, and JDS did not look that great against Overeem himself, whereas Stipe came in there and uh, did demolished the demolition man, so to speak.
Very true, very true. And Overeem has stated he's hoping JDS wins so they can set up that rematch. Overeem coming off a win as well, and about to fight Verdum for probably what would be the number one contender, anyways.
Hmm.
But after that, he did. Junior Dos Santos came in and really put a beating on Ben Rothwell, if you remember.
Yep.
So I'm still excited to see what Junior Dos Santos can do. He's gonna go down as one of the best heavyweights of all time,
Yeah, just that
regardless of
trilogy he had with Kane. I mean, was whew.
that winning the championship belt. And he's been the clear number two guy for a long time, kind of like Benavidez in the Mighty Mouse division or
Yeah.
featherweight, right?
I mean, yep. And I'm a huge fan of Junior. I mean, you couldn't have a nicer guy. His boxing has always been exemplary in the MMA realm. That straight right hand of his is a fucking monster. And yeah, I'm a really huge fan of Junior. I just it's disappointing for me to say this. I just think Stipe is a better fighter at this point of their careers.
I'd have to actually agree with you. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate
I hear
and
you, man.
see
I,
both
I want
sides.
I want to too because I'm a big fan.
But yeah, if there's one guy that's equally as nice as JDS, it would be Stipe. And he's just a humble guy, man. Still a firefighter, still goes to his 9 to 5 every day. And not every day. I think he puts aside a lot of time for training. But I
Hmm.
mean, he's still a dedicated firefighter, which says a lot about somebody's personality as a champion. Um, with that being said, yeah, he's one of those guys that can. I think what wins him this fight against JDS, my personal opinion, and albeit JDS's striking might be a little bit more crisp, but JDS is or not JDS, Stipe, he's one of those guys, and you saw this in the Overeem fight. He can take shots. He can take more damage than he's gonna put out,
Hmm.
and when he hits you hard. He's a little bit like skilled Shane Carwin,
Hmm.
with those big hands, and he's hitting you.
So he's willing to get in there, take a shot, but he'll
I
go
don't
in
think
there and land a heavier punch.
I don't think he's quite the puncher Shane Carwin was. I mean, that guy, he'd probably kill a rhinoceros. But Stipe,
A young rhinoceros?
yeah, a young
Dare I
rhinoceros,
say?
a young rhinoceros. But Stipe has proven to be a powerful guy who's skilled everywhere. This is kind of the new age of MMA rather, and you can say the same thing about JDS. He's one of those guys that's all around. They're both all around MMA fighters, and I
Yeah,
guess
for
you
sure.
have to be that to get to the championship level. but they're both guys that can win, in different ways.
Yeah, I would actually give the advantage as far as hands to Junior.
Yeah,
I just don't think he can. He has as good of a chin as Stipe right now.
that's what I was gonna say. That's exactly where my
So
next point
playing
was
with
gonna
fire
be.
here.
Yeah, the chin is gonna be an issue. But man, as JDS showed versus Mark Hunt, he can hit you with some shit too, man.
Like
Spinning
spinning.
back kicks.
Yeah, he hit him with a spinning kick.
Yeah.
Shit.
So this fight, can't really expect anything, man. You're just gonna have to tune in and see. I mean,
Yeah, it's a heavyweight too, so none of those guys held a championship for longer than 2 fights. So
the bet line basically says that -140 Stipe, JDS +110, and I think we're both leaning with Stiopic.
Stiopic, yep.
I like Joey Diaz calls it. He's like Stiopic will beat them both.
You got Stiopic and Masvidal and who else he pronounces right? Oh, Kalabib.
Speaking of, man, this card, man, some of these names, well, actually, no, they're just the top names. Jotko, all those are pretty easy. But I always have a hard time with Joanna Champion. I'll just call her that. Young Jacek.
It's like the J is silent.
Young Jacek. But regardless, she's one of those gals I really love watching. Great card, man. I'm thrilled, man. We're finally getting MMA back. And this is a card I've been looking forward to, and I know you've been looking forward to for a long time.
Yeah, super excited. I mean, I couldn't say it any more times already.
Yeah, I would call this a must-watch for the Shoot the Ones listeners.
Of course.
We usually rate these as, you could miss it. This is a must-watch.
Well, typically we rate them afterwards, but, I mean, everything on paper says this is going to be that card.
Yeah, I mean, even if 2 fights bomb on this main card, still gonna be a nasty main card, man. There's no way 3 out of the 5. Well, I don't want to jinx it, but
Don't do it.
But I think at least 3, probably 4 of them are gonna be fireworks.
Yeah. So we really look forward to going over the results in our next episode. It's going to be episode 15 of our show. We're gonna mainly discuss what happened here and possibly have a guest.
Yeah, we're going to try to get Ricky on here. We also have that Bellator card to look forward to. Rory McDonald versus
Paul Semtex Daly.
That's right, Paul Semtex Daly. That's going to be one that we're looking forward to in Bellator. Bellator has had a little time off and going to be back in the spotlight next week. I believe there's a UFC card as well next week. Can't quite remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah, but we'll get to it when we get to it. So, yeah, exciting. This is exciting. We have exciting time. We have things coming up. This card, the London card with Bellator is going to be awesome. Potential interview. So, yeah, things are looking up here at Shoot the Ones.
Yeah, man, excellent episode. Thank you guys for joining us again. It's been a lot of fun, man. We're still, trying to be consistent and just real as fight fans, just excited to have MMA back, man. It's tough, as fight dorks to miss 2 weeks of MMA. But boxing, it filled the void a little bit.
Yeah, boxing did its thing, and 211 is definitely the card to get right back into the swing of things and get our MMA on.
I agree. If you guys have any feedback on this episode or just anything, if you guys want to talk about MMA, you have some kind of discussion point that you want to hear on the show, please reach out to us. You guys can reach out to us on Facebook.
Also, our platforms are SoundCloud, YouTube. We are on iTunes and Stitcher. Check out MMApodcast.com. It's a pretty cool website that features a lot of MMA content, including yours truly, Shoot the Ones podcast.
Yeah, man, I like to check out some of the other podcasts that came out about the same time as mine. This guy's got literally everything on there. So that's pretty cool to be, included in that.
Yeah, so shout out to them. Shout out to our listeners. Shout out to Sierra. Shout out to who else you want to give a shout out to while we're doing this? Come on, Jada.
I know, man.
Come on, let's give a shout out.
I'm not a big
Do what you feel.
Guy, man.
Give a shout out to your broski.
Oh yeah, my bro. Yeah, boy.
Shout out to Jacoby. Shout out to
Jacoby
Daniel.
and Zach for hooking us up with the beats.
For sure.
I don't think we're gonna use any of this shit.
I'm using it. Respect is gotta be given. Yes, sir.
Guys, you shot the ones with us.
As always,
What a
your
treat.
co-hosts, Dema and Genya.
Out.